All right, AP World, the beat goes on. All right, so we left things off, and we were taking a look at the basically the roots of Adolf Hitler and the rise of Nazism in Germany. So this is where we had finished things. So I'm going to jump us up over here. And one of the ideas that you're going to really will want to kind of make sure is kind of cemented into your memory, along with everything else that we've learned in this class since I don't know, September, is the importance that the Great Depression is going to play with the rise of the Nazis. We've talked about already as far as it being this global event that really, unless you're in the Soviet Union, pretty much no one else is escaping. But this is really, like it says there, this is what's going to open the door for the Nazis is going to be this economic catastrophe that is going to have people scared, desperate, and pretty much looking to anyone who seems to be at least talking about, being able to offer a way out. And so this is going to be, like I said, that's going to be a big one. So keep that kind of in the back of your mind there. All right. It's a fairly complex story here, and I'm not going to go into the details of it because we just really don't need it. Hitler's ability to move from just the leader of this kind of what is at first kind of an extreme and fringe party to ending up as the leader of Germany kind of follows along the lines of first of all the Nazi Party beginning to get members elected to the German Parliament and being able to get some representation that way. When the Depression hits, more Nazis are able to get elected to the parliament. They don't have a majority, but there's enough of them to where their voices are going to be heard. And as the leader of the party, eventually Hitler reaches a point where he is able to pretty much kind of, I'm not going to use the word demand, but the expectation that he should be given a job within the higher echelons of the German government. The president at that time, Paul Hindenburg, old ancient general from World War One, is the president, and the belief is by Hindenburg and others in the Weimar government is that if they invite Hitler in, they can control him. Okay, they can keep an eye on him. They can control him. That what they already recognize as the potential for some kind of dark instincts from this guy and his party, that they can keep it under wraps. Big mistake. Okay. Hitler is offered the position of chancellor, which is almost kind of like a like vice president, if you want to think of it that way. It's a little weaker, but it's kind of in that realm. And when Hindenburg dies, basically natural causes, old guy in 1934, Hitler is able to step in and declare himself the leader. It's kind of a shaky lead that he has, but that's not going to last for very long. Getting himself to this place where when you see that word Führer, pretty much German for leader, and what Hitler is going to use as his title, the Der Führer, the leader. All right. Not long after Hitler rises to this position, there is a mysterious and as of yet never totally solved fire that destroys the Reichstag building in Berlin. This would be the equivalent to our U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Burning. It's an arson fire. That part is clear, and there ends up being a man who will be accused and found guilty and executed and all that. And he's going to under when he's testifying in court is going to tell the court that he's a communist. And again, there's a lot of mystery around this. The suspect was mentally developmentally disabled, and so whether he should have really even been on the stand testifying in the first place, who knows. There's some evidence that points that the Nazis themselves may have been behind this fire, and when you think about what transpires because of it, there's a conspiracy theory to kind of chew on, because what Hitler does immediately after the Reichstag fire is he declares a national emergency. With the suspect being a communist, he tells the German people that this is basically the opening guns of a attempted communist takeover of Germany, and that communists that and there is an active communist party in Germany, that he's not making anything up there, but he probably is exaggerating to the extreme that communists are readying themselves for a revolution to bring down the Weimar Republic and that sort of thing. And so what Hitler does is he declares an emergency. By doing so, he restricts people's rights that they have under the German Constitution. He does this under the guise of, we need to safeguard the country, and for a temporary period of time, we're going to need to, restrict your rights. We're going to have to limit the rights that you have to keep the country safe. And the German people willingly go along with this because, well, I mean, the person who's in the leadership role is telling them they're in danger. They have no idea that those rights, once restricted, are never, ever going to come back. But Hitler uses this as kind of his excuse, and then also uses it to start going after opposition, not only just communists, but other people that he recognizes that might be opposition to him, cementing his power at the top of the German government. And so other democratic politicians in Germany, the other big party was the Social Democratic Party. And he starts going after some of those leaders and accusing them of treason and plotting against Germany. And this is really where Hitler is going to be able to rise to that role of Der Führer, to be the unquestioned leader of Germany, and where he's going to begin his course of basically introducing Germans to his version of fascism, which is going to be a pretty extreme model. We've already talked about his anti-Semitism. And one of the things that he will do as a leader is really double down on anti-Semitism. This is kind of the fascist playbook of building support by going after a minority group in the country, and to basically blame that minority group for a lot of the country's problems. And Hitler will go to extremes to talk about the connection between Jewish people and the Communist Party, and that a lot of the communists plotting against the German government are also Jewish. He's going to be able to run through a number of laws that are going to start to restrict Jewish participation in German society. Those Jews that have the means and can do it, a lot of them get out of the country in the early and mid 1930s. But by the time you start getting into the late 1930s, the German government starts even to restrict the ability of Jews to be able to escape from the country. The Nuremberg laws are a set of laws that are passed in the mid-late 30s by this now Nazi government that restrict the kind of jobs that Jews can have, where Jews can go to school. Who they can marry. It begins to really just shut down social life and professional life, and really almost all aspects of Jewish people to be able to participate in German society at all. And then that peaks with what comes to be known as the Night of Broken Glass, Kristallnacht, which happens, I believe, is in November of 1938. And this is a response to a young Jewish man in Paris who assassinates a German diplomat. And he does so out of anger over the way that Jewish people are being treated in Germany. The Nazi government pretty much kind of, I don't know if you know those Purge movies, that series, in a way they kind of pull one of these and tell the German people that they are basically deserving of a night of vengeance against Jews for this act of violence against one of their own. And it is a night of just basically rampaging violence. I mean, most of it not led by common German people, but by the Nazis themselves. But like the photograph you see over there on the right side, the burning of synagogues. There are I think it's not a massive number, but still, I think it's between 100 and a couple hundred Jewish people are killed over the course of the evening. Many others jailed. Jewish-owned businesses and shops are vandalized and destroyed. It is kind of a signal, for those Jewish people who hadn't gotten out before Kristallnacht. For many of them, it's going to already be too late. Either they can't afford to figure out a way out, or the laws are rapidly kind of closing in on them to where it's going to be more and more difficult for them to get out. But this is where you start to see the Nazis begin to ramp up what is going to be their war against Jewish people, first in Germany and then beyond. Okay, let's see here. It's also going to be during this time, kind of mid to late 30s, once Hitler has cemented his place in power. And we mentioned this once already before, but this is where Germany will create a fairly tight military treaty with Italy, and together they will be known, and later on Japan will join them, but known as the Axis powers, as we start kind of hurtling towards World War II. One of the first major moves that Hitler makes, besides more or less declaring war on the Jews in Germany, is beginning to, like it says there, he's going to start pushing back hard on the Treaty of Versailles. In a series of speeches, he tells the German people and pretty much the world that Germany has a right to defend itself just like any other country. And to a certain extent, Hitler is pretty much saying, I'm going to start rebuilding our military. And if you're not happy with it, do something about it. You know where to find us. And Hitler is taking a very much a calculated gamble here. He knows the impact that the Great Depression is having on the countries of the world, and especially the countries of the West. That France and Great Britain are up to their eyeballs in economic problems, dealing with the unemployment and trying to figure out ways of reversing the effects of the Great Depression. And Hitler, as much as this guy exhibits some incredibly dark impulses, and deserves his role as one of the ultimate bad guys of history, that doesn't mean that he's an idiot. And he's fairly cunning in being able to read the situation in Europe here. And so, not only does he start this rebuilding of the military, but he's also going to declare that Germany is going to start to seize back some of the territories that were taken from them after World War I. And that again, land that he says was improperly taken from us, and we are going to be demanding its return. And so, and that is what is going to happen, which is going to lead us into this period of the 1930s that is characterized by this word appeasement. And appeasement is simply, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the word, is when you give in to someone just to try to please them. All right, thinking about the little screaming baby, and you appease the baby by putting the little binky in their mouth so they got something to Yeah, it is really that idea of just trying to giving in to someone or something to just try to make them happy. Okay, and we will find out how appeasement plays a role going into these years leading up to World War II. And really, as I just explained to you, that's going to be the driving characteristic of this time period, is going to be leaders, particularly Western European leaders, giving in to Hitler, finding themselves so distracted by the Great Depression, and also just so, there's probably an element of this where it's just kind of the, almost the anguish of realizing that as much as they thought, who knows how, but thought that the Treaty of Versailles was going to create this period of stability and peace, that it's unraveling. And so some of it is almost kind of like that denial of of the reality of what's happening. And so that is going to be, and we'll look at some examples of it here, starting with Austria. One of the parts of the Treaty of Versailles was that Germany was forbidden from adding any territory to its country, that its borders were basically set, shrunken borders were basically set. And so when Hitler declares in 1938 that Austria is going to be joining Germany, that they're going to create what's called an Anschluss, which is almost kind of like the idea of Germany annexing, not invading, not attacking, nothing like that, because Austria actually has a very, very active Nazi party as well. And Austria and Germany do have a lot of kind of cultural connections. And Hitler was born and spent his early years in Austria. He is an Austrian in that regard. And so Hitler just pretty much says that, Austria wants to be part of Germany, is pretty much the way he sells it, and says, so we are adding Austria to Germany. And declares this and waits to see what the British are going to do about it, what the French are going to do about it, maybe what the United States can do about it. And no one really does anything. All right. There might be a few weak complaints about, hey, you might want to look back in the Treaty of Versailles. That's kind of a violation. But no threats, no, if you don't, reverse course on this, that we're going to do this. There's nothing like that. All right. And so very shortly after that, he makes a demand for part of Czechoslovakia, a territory that, if you look at the map there, the green parts of Czechoslovakia that kind of ring the outer edge, and also a territory of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland. And for those of you in AP Hug, hey, irredentism, remember that? And here it is in action. Because most of the people living in the Sudetenland also kind of identified as being a little bit more Germanic in terms of their ethnicity or culture, or however you want to describe that. And so Hitler makes the claim that these people need to be able to return to what he now refers to as the Third Reich. This is the idea of Germany's history being split into the First Reich, which was kind of all of German history leading right up to the unification. And then under Bismarck, the unification of Germany is right on through to World War I, and the aftermath is the Second Reich. And now Germany under Hitler is the Third Reich. I guess I should have explained that earlier. Anyhow, he wants to add the Sudetenland to the Third Reich. Okay, is the demand there. At this point, Czechoslovakia raises a major stake. They don't want to give up a big chunk of their territory to Germany. And they do. They turn to France and England and say, we need some help on this. Czechoslovakia is not in a position where they want to, kind of like you see the ostrich up there burying their head in the sand. And so a series of meetings is called together by the leaders of England and France to meet with Hitler and to try to talk him out of this and try to, kind of get some control over the situation. When they meet, Hitler is pretty adamant. He pretty much just says, no, this territory should be part of Germany. The people want to be part of Germany, and I'm going forward with this. And Czechoslovakia and these other countries, you can choose what you want to do about it, but I'm going in. Hitler does eventually, over a lot of just negotiating, agrees that if he's given the Sudetenland, basically, okay, if England and France say go ahead, you can take this land, that he says that he'll leave the rest of Czechoslovakia alone, and he pretty much makes it sound like it's like, okay, this will be the last of my territorial demands. Okay, by the way, Czechoslovakia is not in on this negotiation at this point. This is mainly Hitler and the leaders of Britain, Neville Chamberlain, that you see over there on the left side, and then France, figuring this deal out. And so Czechoslovakia, as you can imagine, isn't going to be too pleased when they find out that these countries have decided to give a part of their country away. But they're not going to be able to do much about it. Hitler signs his name, puts a signature to this piece of paper saying, I won't take any more Czechoslovakia. This will be the last land demand, that we make of anyone. And that is the photograph of Neville Chamberlain after he lands in England, waving this piece of paper with Hitler's signature on it and telling the British people, this, will guarantees peace in our time. There will be no war. Don't worry, that kind of a thing. Meanwhile, back in Berlin, one of Hitler's aides, the top leaders there, the Nazis in control, says to Hitler, it's like, you just signed your name to that, and isn't that going to kind of constrain your future plans here? And Hitler just kind of scoffed and just said, it's just a piece of paper. In his mind, whatever. And sure enough, 6 months later, he rolled his troops into and took the rest of Czechoslovakia, pretty much saying, Czechoslovakia, the whole country really is a little bit more Germanic, and so all of it needs to belong to Germany. When Czechoslovakia looked to England and France, say we need some backup here, England and France said, sorry, Czechoslovakia, you're on your own. And Czechoslovakia knew there was no chance of winning a war because through all this period of time, Hitler is rebuilding his military, rebuilding his army, navy, air force. He now has an air force, and they know there's nothing they can do about it. And so they allow Hitler to basically peacefully invade Czechoslovakia. But like it says there, Europe at this point, they know what Hitler's all about, and that this guy is intent on not just returning Germany to its pre-World War I status, but he's looking beyond and wants to make Germany even bigger and more powerful. All right. The very next year, Hitler turns his attentions eastward again, and this time to Poland. And Poland was a fairly new country that had been formed post-World War I and had been given some German territory. Part of what had used to be the German state of Prussia is now along what's called the Danzig corridor, and is under Polish control. It's given to Poland. And now he's saying, same thing, irredentism, okay? That the people of Danzig are German, and thus they need to be returned to the Reich, and makes this demand of Poland. This time, when he makes this threat against Poland, both the British and the French say that if you do this, if you follow through on this, it will mean war between our countries. They realize that too late now that appeasement is not going to work. You're not going to please Hitler to a point where he's satisfied permanently. And so at this point, yes, Hitler is knows that if he goes into Poland, that it means war. The thing is, Hitler doesn't really believe it. Okay, he thinks it's a bluff. He thinks that these countries, by now, he believes, number one, still there's the depression, distraction, but he also believes they're weak. He has no respect for their leaders. He thinks that their desire to not have to fight another war is going to ace out any other consideration that they have. And so ultimately he believes that they will not go through with it. All right. It's also during this time that a really strange little side story suddenly pops up out of nowhere, and that is Germany signing what's called a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Okay, Hitler from almost the beginning, in speeches and in action, has proven himself to be, he hates communism. He is a communist hater. And so for him to suddenly sign a treaty promising to never attack the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union promising to never attack Germany, just seems really bizarre. Somewhere, just kind of where did that come from? But the reality is it is a political necessity in the eyes of both Germany and the Soviet Union. Both Hitler and Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union, probably at some level know that eventually there's going to be a war between those two countries. Hitler, because he's already planned it, he wants the East. I mean, Mein Kampf and Lebensraum and all that. And Stalin knows Hitler's got that plan going on. And so in a way, this is a weird way for both countries to kind of buy some time. And so they make this pact. Some of it is kept secret, especially the part where they agree that after Hitler attacks Poland, that they're going to split Poland between them. But you also have this promise that they're not going to attack each other. And Hitler is doing it just to buy time so he can build up his military. And make it big enough to where he can launch this, what will have to be a massive invasion to conquer the Soviet Union. All right. So really odd one. I mean, the pact itself is made public and has people all over the world scratching their heads. But, it's not going to take too long for people to figure out that's why, they made this agreement. All right. And then we have, we have the beginning of World War II in Europe. All right. On September 1st, 1939, you've got the date there. And that's probably one worth trying to enter into your memory banks, is when Hitler launches an invasion of Poland. Kind of comes up with a flimsy excuse about the Poles crossing the border and some kind of acts of terrorism. Again, no one's really going to believe it at this point. But sends his armies smashing into Poland. Poland does militarily resist. I mean, this is war. This is fighting, and along with that declaration of war against Poland, England and France finally will follow through as well. What they don't do, both of them will declare war against Germany in the days following, but what they don't do is militarily support Poland. They pretty much say that we are at war, but there's not going to be any British or French soldiers being sent to Poland to help them. The Poles are going to be on their own, and that will seal their fate. They will not be able to survive this invasion, and they will be conquered. But the war is underway. Okay. And I can back up the train just a little bit there, just to kind of throw in the bit that by the time World War II breaks out in Europe, historians now pretty much say that World War II had already been underway for a couple of years in Asia. I mean, we don't really know it at the time, but in 1937, Japan had started a invasion proper of China itself. And so we look at those kind of those 2 years, 1937 in Asia, 1939 in Europe, as where we see the start of World War II. All right, let me get a little bit going here on what the College Board calls conducting World War II. And so, in other words, the warriors themselves. All right. So to talk about what it is that Japan wants to do in East Asia is to create what they call a new order, okay, which is chillingly similar language to what Hitler is going to be using for Europe, also using that term new order. And it is a reference that, the countries that used to be the power base of power, the countries that used to be feared, respected, all that sort of thing, that is going to become history. The new order is going to be, in Europe, is going to be Germany, is going to be the concentration of power. That is going to be the country that is going to be feared, respected, basically the one on the rise. And then in Asia, Japan has the same, plans in mind for themselves. And so this is where Japan, is going to take all those lessons that they've been learning about, from the Europeans, how you build an imperial power and all that sort of thing. And now here's where they unleash it. And they do. They have this idea of creating a massive empire that will encompass Asia into the Pacific, even potentially in the future, including Australia, that sort of a thing. And the map kind of will give you an idea over there of the extent that their empire will eventually grow. They'll take out almost all of Southeast Asia, a good portion of China, and then all of those islands that you see in the Pacific will all end up being under Japanese control before the war starts going back the other way. With Japan, increasingly, what's going to be the main obstacle to them and their plans is going to be the United States, and not because we're really that concerned about Japan taking over all of these territories and invading into these countries. Our main concern is economic, and that we want the ability to trade freely anywhere we can in Asia. Just like we do nowadays. Back then, maybe not as critically important, but we do a lot of business in parts of Asia for, various natural resources and for inexpensive consumer goods in some points. Not as much back then with the consumer goods, but mainly the resources, that sort of thing. And so we fear that Japan having that control is going to interfere with that. And so the U.S. government tells Japan, you need to rein it in. And when the Japanese government tells them that, no, we aren't, this is what we're doing. This is our plan. This is the new order. The United States begins to threaten Japan with the sale of U.S. oil. Okay, this sounds kind of odd because we live in a world where we're used to the United States, being able to supply some of its domestic needs, ourselves from oil that we drill here in the United States. But we have to buy a lot of oil on the open markets, Middle East and that sort of thing. Back in the 1930s, actually, the United States was one of the major exporters of oil. All right, we produced so much of it that we took care of all of our domestic needs, and we sold a ton of it. And Japan was one of our big customers. And think about it, Japan is industrialized. They need oil. And some of the countries they're going after in Asia, some of the motivation is to gain control over areas where they'll be able to supply their own oil. But in 1937 through 1941, they get a lot of their oil from the United States. And the ultimate threat coming from the United States is that if you don't rein it in, if you don't, stop this aggression in Asia and the Pacific, we will place an embargo against you. We will stop selling you oil. That makes the Japanese blood run cold, because without that American oil and not having a really a viable alternative to turn to, all their plans come crashing down. Their industry grinds to a halt, and their new order is going to be ashes. And so with those threats, the Japanese at that point begin to plot and plan for a war against the United States. What they plan on being a strike that will bring the United States basically to its knees, and agree to supply Japan with whatever they need in terms of oil. All right, and that will be what will eventually get us to the start of World War II, involving the United States, attack on Pearl Harbor. All right. I think that is where I'm going to hit the brakes. That's 30 minutes of notes, and we'll call that good enough, and we'll regroup on this. And I may be coming at you with more video notes. We'll see what goes. All right. Thanks.